Hello, I am Rudy, and welcome to this fourth episode of the School of Live Streaming. It's going to be probably the shortest show so far, mainly because of the subject, which is bandwidth. And the reason for that is when I looked everything up past week, it became quickly obvious for me that it was too technical. And so I prepared, I think, 5 or 6 slides that's going to show you some figures, kinds you have to be aware of. So far we saw cameras, we saw microphones. Last week we talked about software and hardware. And today the last piece to start is, of course, we have some internet that we need. But before we talk about that, and I'm watching the chat at the same time. Yesterday I spoke in the Walls group about YouTube chat live. So a few days ago YouTube rolled out some extra things. One of the things was that if you watch a show later, that you can follow the chat as it was the day before. What I noticed was that on yesterday's chat of Walls and also my chat, there was a notice that it wasn't possible to see it. That can have two causes. First cause is it's not rolled out already for everyone. But the second one, and that was one I wasn't aware of, is that you lose the chat when you're trimming your videos in YouTube. So it's something that I do, for instance. When this show is finished, an hour later or the day after, I'm trimming my video. So I'm taking away 10 minutes before the show starts and maybe 5 minutes after the show ends. When you do that, you lose your live chat. And when you first said, why is this again? But if you think about it, it's normal. Your chat is connected, of course, to your live video. And when you start trimming, you're losing the connection between the two. That's probably the reason why you're losing the chat if you're trimming your videos in YouTube. So that's a first point. The second one is, as you probably know, and Martin and Tommy are also a member of SOLS. I don't know if John is also a member of SOLS, but SOLS has 948 members at the moment, which is huge. I sincerely hope that before we start Streamfest, which is in the beginning of August, that we can reach 1,000 subscribers. And that would be great for the founders of SOLS. So WOLS, let's hope we can reach the 1,000 viewers before Streamfest. Then the shout out of the week, and unfortunately I cannot show you the video because there's discussion if you can show someone else video on your show. I'm not going to take the risk of being taken down. But the link is going to be in the description. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Click on the symbol in the right-hand corner and click on the bell so you'll be notified when I'm live. But the shout out of the week goes to Tim Vandenberg of vMix. And why? Well, some of you maybe have already seen it, but he made an hilarious movie about, he called it PTZ Symphony, and I think it was five PTZ cams at the same time, and he programmed it with all kinds of shortcuts. So when he was panning to the left, the 5 cameras were panning to the left. When it was going right, the 5 cameras were at the same time going to the right. And he did it with kind of a music thing behind. It's funny, and I have too much time, but there is something behind it. And when you see the movie, and again, it's going to be in the description, you see what's possible with shortcuts and with cameras. Some of them were connected via NDI, some of them via SDI. But it shows you what's been possible with vMix shortcuts and PTZ cameras. Before we start talking about bandwidth, I want to show you something special I found. And let me see if I can find my... And this is what I want to show you. Okay. It's really an incredible story. I put, again, also this link is going to be in the description. Imagine you're the son of someone who founded a big live streaming company, or a company that made equipment for live streaming TV studios. And suddenly you receive a call, hey, we have some equipment we want to get rid of. Are you interested in taking it back? And they said, yeah, of course we are interested. And this switcher came back and it had the number 2. So it was the second piece that was ever made by the guy's father. And it's incredible, but this piece of analog equipment was being used during 41 years by in Canada CBC News and CTV News. I don't think in these days we are going to have equipment that lasts so many years. And what I really like, and I'm going to quote something from the text, is apparently they have it's about Ross Video, and they have a code of ethics that comprises 9 statements. And one entry, number 3 reads, "We will not ship crap." And I really like it because too many companies are releasing products because they want to be the first, and then a few days later you're already having firmware updates and everything. What's funny is that they changed this rule a little bit, and now it's called "We will not knowingly ship a product that does not match specification," but it just doesn't have the same ring to it. So it's another language, but it says exactly the same. We want to deliver quality, and it's good to see a company that still wants to deliver quality. So big thumbs up, Ross Video, and a nice story to read about. Okay, that gives us now, I think, the opportunity to start with the subject of today, and it's called bandwidth. And bandwidth is measured using both upload and download speeds. If you take internet at home, probably they're going to give you 2 figures: upload speed and download speed. We as video broadcasters or live streamers, for us the most important part is upload speed. So I have, for instance, at the moment 200 megabits up, 2 megabit, already the mistake, 200 megabits down, so for downloading things from the internet, and I have 20 up. And as you can see here on the presentation, often the upload speed is a lot smaller than download speeds. Some people have the same number. I forgot the correct terminology, but is it called full duplex or so? So 200 up and 200 down, for instance, or 100 up, 100 down. I have so 200 down, 20 up. Please feel free to put into the chat what you guys are having at home, so we can compare our upload and download speeds. So that would be nice to see what everyone is having at home. What most internet providers are doing is the numbers they are giving you, that's up till a certain number. It's going to be never the exact number. If they give you 20 up, you're never going to have 20 up. Maybe it's going to be 18 up or so. So that's something to take into consideration if you're really going towards the edge of your upload speeds. The total required bandwidth you need is the sum of all your video bit rates plus the sum of all your audio bit rates. So for instance, if you're streaming 1080p at 8 megabits and your audio is 256, your total number is 8.2 megabits. I'm streaming to YouTube now, and I'm only sending one stream. Some people have their own server, Wowza server or so, and they are sending up 2 or 3 streams. They're sending out a stream to YouTube, they're sending out a stream to Facebook, or they're sending out a stream to YouTube in 480p, in 720p, in 1080p. So every stream you're sending out adds up. That's why it's so important that you're using a CDN like YouTube or Dacast, because you're just sending one stream, and that company is then sending out all the other streams for you. That's why just because not YouTube, that you have to pay Dacast and Restream.io for doing that. And what you roughly need is double the upload speed that you're using at the moment. So if I'm using now 6, then it's fair to say that you need 12 megabits per second. That gives you some headroom if something goes wrong, or other people at home, because I'm here, I'm the only user of my internet connection. But if you have a family and your wife and children, or husband and children are using the internet at the same time, of course you're not going to have the completely bandwidth. The second thing we have to talk about is bitrate and resolution. So bitrate is the amount of data being sent in your stream in kilobits per second or in megabits per second. Nowadays it's practically always megabits per second. I know that Giles, for instance, struggles from time to time, and he has to send in smaller figures. And resolution, that's of course the size of the video stream you want to send, 480p, 720p, 1080p, 4K, and so. I'm seeing here in the chat that John has 40 down, 7 up, and it's exactly is proving my point. He has in theory at 80-20, so he's almost at half what's being promised. Martin has 75 down, 60-20 up with a 4G router. That's incredible. We've seen a lot of things that Martin was doing with his 4G router, and it sometimes amazes me how fast the speed of the thing is. So bitrate and resolution. Now they are contradictory figures on the internet. I took a few of them. This one, and I'm going to show up this picture. This is from the cast. So the recommendations for streaming, if you're streaming 240p, is 500 kilobits per second. If you're streaming 360p, it's 1 megabits per second. 480p is 3 megabits per second. 720p, what a lot of people are using, asked for 5 megabits per second. 1080p, 8 megabits per second, and 4K, 25. So I can't use 25. I can't use 4K at the moment, and I think John is also not able to use 4K at the moment. Tommy, I'm sure that it is not in the possibility to use 4K. So you see here, okay, probably most people are going to use 720p or 1080p to do a live stream. The advantage of streaming to YouTube is you just send up your highest quality stream that's possible. Let's say 1080p, what I'm doing, and YouTube itself is sending out the 720p, the 480p, the 360p, depending on the internet speed you have at home. So that's a big advantage of YouTube. Things to consider is, of course, high resolutions and bit rates requires a faster internet speed. But these streams will up your data faster. It's something I didn't have any problems so far, but it's something you're going to have when you have data plan, a limited data plan. I'm going to show you calculation how much bandwidth I'm using during this live stream. But at a certain moment, let's say that you have 20 gig and your 20 gig, you reached that, you're not going to be able to stream anymore. It's also something Martin with his 4G, and he has a data plan of 20 gigabyte, for instance. When it's finished, it's finished. It's something we had, for instance, last year during Streamfest. Charles's data plan was completely used. So that's something. Sometimes it's better to stream in a lower quality, so you can have longer streams than want to stream in the highest quality possible. Encoding high resolution video streams put more strain on the computer running your encoding software. That's normal, of course. If I stream in 360p, my laptop is not going to do as much work as if I stream in 1080p, for instance. So if you don't have a very, very new laptop, take also this thing into consideration for your encoding settings. And also a big point of attention is that not all users have fast enough internet to watch high resolution streams. With YouTube, it's not really a problem. As I said before, I can send out 1080p, and when you click on the cogwheel on the live stream of YouTube, YouTube is giving you what you need, 480p. But if you using your own server or another platform and you send out 1080p, and I have a phone and I'm on a 3G connection, then of course the video is going to come in buffering. So don't only think about your speed, but think also about people that are in rural areas and don't have the best speed, internet speed possible. John is telling here in the chat that 720p is probably a good compromise for everyone. That's totally correct, John. I'm using 1080p just because I can. But if I would, in a few weeks, I'm going to do multiple streams a week, and then I'm going to be probably going down to 720p. Tommy tried 1080p this past Sunday into the church, but it was a little bit too much for his computer, so he's going to dial back to 720. Yeah, and I think when I'm watching stuff on YouTube, 720p is really okay. And when I'm watching the figures of my viewers in YouTube, more and more people are watching YouTube on an iPhone or an iPad or another device, not really on a big screen or a computer. So 720p then is okay. Martin, okay, slant line is 7520, okay. And his 4G is usually better. That's something I cannot understand here in Belgium, that 4G is better than landline, because here, if there's something that's really working good here in Belgium, then it's our internet connection, better than 4G, but it's not all everywhere the same. Okay, what I want to show you here, for probably you guys are knowing this. This is a small chart I made with all the different resolutions. What you see here, the white thing is 4K, and if you compare that, for instance, with 640 by 360, the green one, the green square, it's a huge difference. If you look at the yellow one, that's 720p, and you compare that with 4K, you can imagine how much computer power and internet speed you're going to need for 4K, because you can put I think 8 times 720p in 4K. If you see the blue square, that's 1080p. That's what I'm streaming at the moment. You can have 4 1080p's in one 4K. So you see it's a huge difference. It gives you a visual representation what you're going to need. What John is also saying here, that high quality sound is probably more relevant for a church service. That's also a very good one, and it's being said a lot in other streams also. People are often watching a stream, but they're not really watching, they're more listening to what's being said. I can imagine that some people are now they're just listening to my stream and they're doing something else at the same moment. And certainly in a church environment, you want to listen to the sermons, and so if the pastor is not really sharp, who cares? But his audio has to be good. And luckily for the moment, audio isn't asking too much bandwidth. Okay, then encoding settings, again from the cast, what's being used, and I don't want to go too deep into it, because then it becomes too complicated, and I'm not really a specialist in this stuff. The video codec that's being used by most providers is H.264. There is H.265 at the moment, but I just read that the reason it's not everywhere is because 4 or 5 companies are using H.265. They're in kind of a consortium, and everyone is asking money at other companies who wants to use H.265. I know from first hand that other companies are busy with another video codec. What they're trying to do is putting more information like 4K into a codec, and that you're not going to need as much bandwidth as nowadays. That's what they're trying to do now with new codecs. The audio codec being used is AAC. Probably you know MP3 better, but AAC is what's being used more. It gives a better compression and better quality compression wise. It's better. The audio sample rate that's being used at the moment is 44-100. I know people who are doing video are sometimes using 48, but 44-100 kilohertz is what's being used mostly. The audio bitrate should match the video resolution following the cast rules. So for between 480p and 720p, they recommend 128 kilobits per second stereo. For 1080p, they're saying 256 kilobits per second. But that's something you have to play with and see what you can do and if it's really giving better quality or not. And just to make it complete, there has to be a keyframe interval every 2 seconds. vMix is doing it by default, or the other software also. So these are just plain figures. This PowerPoint presentation is going to be again on my Facebook group page, and if you have not already subscribed, you can do that by going to facebook.com/groups/School of Live Streaming, and after every show I put the PowerPoint presentation with everything you have seen here into that group, and that's also the group where we have our discussions. There is also the official Facebook page, that's facebook.com/School of Live Streaming, and that's where I'm just announcing the shows and a few other things. But if you want to look back at the presentations, please feel free to go to groups, School of Live Streaming, and you have access to the presentation. Okay, what are now the recommended upload encoding settings for YouTube? I'm just going to show you YouTube and Facebook because these are the most used at the moment. For YouTube, the container has to be MP4, audio codec AAC, video codec H.264, and the frame rate, the content should be encoded and uploaded in the same frame rate it was recorded. The video bit rates for YouTube, and I hope this is large enough. For the frame rates we are using mostly, so 24, 25, 30. For 720p, they recommend 5 megabits per second. I'm using a predefined preset in vMix, and I'm using 6 megabits per second. For 1080p, YouTube recommend 8. I'm using 6, and I don't have any problems with it. I'll try to play a little bit with those bit rates, but for me 1080p 6 megabits is enough. You can see here that if you want to stream in 4K, that YouTube recommends between 35 and 45, which is huge. And I don't know that many people who have that bandwidth available. If you're doing sports and you're using 50 and 60, then you need a lot more bit rates, high bit rates. That's something to take in consideration when you're doing a lot of sports and you want to stream that live, that your frame rates are going to be 0.5 higher. And the last slide I want to show you are the recommended settings for Facebook. As you probably know, Facebook is for the moment only allowing you 720p. And they recommend 4 megabits per second as a bit rate, maximum resolution 720p at 30 frames a second, and the rest you can see. A funny one is that the title must have fewer than 250 characters on this, or the stream will fail. I don't know people who are making titles for more than 255 characters, but yeah, that's something that Facebook is telling you. So this is more or less for the presentation. I got something from Tommy that said that you have to be careful when checking your speed on live. Before you're doing a live stream, it's always best to do a speed test. I'm going to show you, it's not really the recommended one, but let me see if I can show you the one I'm using, and it's we're going to do it live. It's speedtest.net, and you have other ones that are better and give you more options. So if I'm doing a speed test now, and be aware that I'm doing a live, I'm the only person here in house that is using the internet connection. I have a download speed in theory of 200, and it gives me 170 now. And the upload speed is normally 20. And that's probably going to be something, yeah. So if you see those figures, I have 220, it gives me 170, and at this moment 17. So in theory I can use 8, 9, maybe till 10, and then I have the rest as a kind of a failover if something goes wrong with the internet connection. But that's something you have to do if you're doing a live stream from someone else. Always do a speed test, see if it's okay, because you can come, okay, I'm going to do a live stream in 1080p. Let's say you need 8 megabits, then you arrive at the event. And because the event is always saying you, yeah, we have plenty of bandwidth. But when you're doing it, the speed test, always do it when it's crowded, because if you're going to do it one day in advance and there's nobody else into the hall and you're using the Wi-Fi or even the the regular internet, it can be that you're the only one, or maybe with 3 or 4 people on the same line. If there are a few hundred people, that gives you a total different figure. Excuse me. So this is what I wanted to show you today. These 4 shows are now where the base is to do the rest of the shows. From next week on, I am going to show you how vMix is working with everything we learned so far. So I'm going to bring in a USB camera, I'm going to bring in my professional camera, and I'm going to show you at a very slow pace how everything is working. We're going to install vMix, we're going to show you a little bit how everything is working. And the aim is to do that in a few weeks again. And let's say that after maybe 10 weeks, that we arrive at the interest, not that all the other parts are not interesting, but then we're going to create shortcuts. We're going to use NextKeys 24, and I see that Dan is here in the show. Hi Dan, welcome. We're going to do picture-in-picture, we're going to do multiple views, what to look after when you're doing a live stream to YouTube, what to do when you're doing a live stream to Facebook, how to set up if you want to stream live to those 2 destinations at the same time. All this stuff are we going to show you with vMix. Why vMix? I told you it last week. It's not because it's the best program. I sincerely, I think it's the best program, but it's just a program I'm using, and it's impossible for me to do every week a show with another program, let's say Wirecast or OBS or something else. So I'm just going to use vMix as the software package to show you now how to set up everything. And for that, I'm going to post a lot in on Facebook in the groups. If you have any questions and you want to see certain topics in vMix, please don't hesitate. Use my website, the contact form. If you go to my website here and And here on my website, you can always ask me questions. Here, when you go to the contact us, just put your name here, put your message here, recommend a topic or a teacher, and then I'll take those questions into one of the next shows. So that's what I'm going to do probably the coming weeks. I'll try to prepare again a few slides so you can have a fallback when you're not be able to watch the show live. These are again into the group School of Live Streaming. We hit a little bit more than the 30 minutes mark. So I'm going to end the show now, and but I stay a little bit longer, 5 or 10 minutes, and see what you guys are telling into the chat. And in the post-show, I'm going to give you also my opinion about the latest 3-4 shows. And if you have any comments about that, please feel free to give them into the comments. Thanks again, Martin, Tommy, John, for being live with me. I hope it was enough information and that you still learned something from it. As I said in the beginning, it was a difficult topic to tackle, and it's quickly I had the impression that it was becoming too difficult if I delved too deep into it. So thanks again, and see you in the after show. Bye bye.